I think it's safe to say that most clients today are not just stressed. They're stuck in sympathetic dominance, in dorsal shutdown, or chaotic oscillation between the two of these things. And traditional advice like breathe, meditate, sleep more, that's just often not enough because the nervous system has suddenly or over time lost its ability to self-regulate. Now, our goal as practitioners is not stress management, okay? No matter how much we may use those terms, it's really about a stress reset. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another 10-minute training. I'm Dr. Vanbergen, and today we're going to talk about advanced stress reset protocols for the nervous system. And this is specifically going to be about how to move beyond basic relaxation strategies and into true autonomic recalibration. I think it's safe to say that most clients today are not just stressed. They're stuck in sympathetic dominance, in dorsal shutdown, or chaotic oscillation between the two of these things. And traditional advice like breathe, meditate, sleep more, that's just often not enough because the nervous system has suddenly or over time lost its ability to self-regulate. Now, our goal as practitioners is not stress management, okay? No matter how much we may use those terms, it's really about a stress reset. So by the end of this training, the goal is that you're going to understand why chronic stress is a pattern and not an event, and how to identify when the nervous system is stuck. Ultimately, we want to use this to then know when and how to apply layered protocols that ultimately help the body return to regulation. Now, advanced stress work begins really with a shift in perspective. Stress is not just cortisol or workload or emotional pressure. It's a learned neurological pattern. When a stressor is unresolved, the nervous system adapts by increasing vigilance, by tightening muscles and altering the way we breathe, by shifting digestion, by changing blood flow. And over time, the body begins to treat normal life as a threat. And that is something we talk about a lot here at Paper Free for Life and at the Senate Institute. The point here is that the nervous system doesn't reset through logic. It resets through safety and repetition. This is why protocols for stress reset or resolution or management, even whatever you want to say, must be rhythmic, predictable, multi-layered, and honestly, they have to be applied constantly because you have to be able to get that repetition. So before applying any advanced protocol, we need to know, I guess, where the nervous system is living in that moment most of the time. There are three common patterns. There is your sympathetic dominance, which is your fight or flight. We talk about that one hugely, right? This is commonly going to be shown as anxiety, racing thoughts, tension in the jaw and the neck and in the shoulders as well. It's like this tension here. Poor sleep, digestive urgency, so suddenly needing to go to the bathroom, having diarrhea, or just going multiple times a day, or like many multiple times, or chronic pain with inflammation. Obviously that's most of the clients we deal with. And these clients, they need downregulation and they need safety cues. Now, the next thing we might experience would be a dorsal vagal shutdown. This is what is known as a freeze or collapse. And common signs of this are going to be fatigue, depression, low motivation, numbness, brain fog, and of course, chronic pain, but potentially without large amounts of visible inflammation. And these clients need gentle activation before relaxation. And then there's the dysregulated oscillation. These clients, they swing between anxiety and exhaustion, and insomnia and hypersomnia. And they swing between pain flares and just total collapse. What they need is stability and they need predictability, not intensity, right? Advanced stress resets always start with matching the protocol to the state that that client is in. So let's look into how we can potentially layer this in, because it is nuanced and it is complex. So the first thing we want to look at is, how do we develop a sensory safety for the client? This is the foundation. Now, examples here would be slow rhythmic breathing that is not forced, okay? Grounding through the feet, or even just through body awareness, being able to actually try and ground yourself and not feel like you're in your head as much. But we're talking as well about like physically grounding on the earth, or using the microcurrent grounding protocol, and using things like vagus nerve or alpha ear clips here. This is going to help to not be stimulating, but to be calming instead. And the goal is simple, right? The goal here is to teach the nervous system that it is safe to slow down. If this layer is skipped, then higher level techniques will fail every single time, because we're not getting the ability to resolve the person's issues if their nervous system doesn't realize that it can be safe. Now, once safety is established, we can introduce repatterning. And a good example of this is, we had a class one time where a guy was stuck during A3 pathways, unable to progress through the 6 points part at the end. And it was about 30 to 40 minutes where we were just sitting there waiting for that point to go to a dose. And in fact, the only thing that got him out of that and got his nervous system working with him again was a combination of the alpha ear clips with a different device at the same time as continuing this treatment, while also talking to him about imagining his kids and everything being good and happy with them. So it kind of comes into this idea of him grounding that. And as he did that, within literally minutes, like 2-3 minutes, the dose went through and the rest of the protocol went easily, because the nervous system had begun to experience sensory safety instead of being tight in that fear pattern. Now, once safety is established, we can introduce the next layer of this, which is repatterning. Now, this includes rhythmic stimulation, bilateral input, consistent timing, and predictable session length. And this is tools where microcurrent and frequency-based approaches like PEMF are going to come in pretty heavily. And they can be extremely effective in this case. Now, the importance here is consistency beats intensity. 5 3-minute sessions is going to do more than one 20-minute session, right? This will be the difference between being gentle or aggressive. And in particular, as we're trying to repattern the brain, there are things that we would want to do in a short period of time, like vagus nerve stimulation, right? That sort of thing is going to help to bring the body into this repatterning state. And we always talk about how the vagus nerve stem is retraining the brain. Now, the next layer, the last layer, well, yeah, it is the last layer of this part of this, is where the long-term change occurs. And this is where we integrate sleep-aligned protocols, circadian awareness, which we talked about in the previous weeks, post-session stillness and hydration and minerals and emotional reframing, because if their mindset is that they're never going to get better, then they're never going to get better. These are things that will help to build that long-term change, but you need the other pieces, right? You need that sensory safety state. Then you can start to repattern the vagus nerve. So you're seeing what I'm saying here, right? Even if you're looking at this entirely from a microcurrent perspective and nothing more, what you're looking at is building the foundation by doing things like alpha ear clips, stuff that makes your body realize that it can be safe. Then you're moving on to things like vagus nerve, where you're actually retraining and repatterning the nervous system. And then you're getting into the things that you can actually do to change things. You're looking at, getting some sleep enhancement going, talking about that hydration and minerals piece. All of these things are valuable anyway, talking about mindsets. But if the baseline isn't there, the results won't happen. So next, let's just talk briefly about this protocol, because I do think it is important to kind of build it in here and to keep that patterning going. One of the things I didn't mention in my little recap there was grounding. And I do think, that is one of those things, the grounding and the alpha ear clips can be done at the beginning. And I would not necessarily say that all of this is done in one session either, right? This is building up. And so this is where your client having an access to a device, whether through a rental through you, or having their own, is going to be very helpful in between sessions, because they could do something simple like grounding and alpha ear clips all day, every day, right? Like they could just keep this pattern going. Once they shift into that sensory safety piece, then they can look into the vagus nerve. They can look into, we can even look into the polyvagal theory if they're particularly stressed. There's a lot of different things we can do and build that in with structured movement even and guided imagery that can be effective. I think, like I mentioned with this guy in the class, is this concept of thinking about things that make you happy and that don't stress you out. So maybe kids isn't the best example as far as the stressing out goes. But anyway, then you move on to these sleep aligned protocols. So making sure that you do all of the right things before bed, making sure you're hydrated, making sure the nutrition is solid, the things that we know can rebuild the body from a holistic level, but then need that foundation first. And this will work in things like, the delta ear clips at bedtime, the PEMF before bed, these sorts of things that you can work in the energy medicine here, but this is also going to be a lot of the hard part for people. It's getting all of the stuff properly done, and especially the mindset piece can be extremely challenging. I think the thing to take away here is that as practitioners, our role is not to eliminate stress. Stress is a part of daily life. It's to restore how our clients regulate stress. Is to show them to rebuild their resilience and to give the nervous system a reliable, safe path back to balance. Advanced stress reset protocols like this work because they're respecting the way the nervous system functions, and they're moving at the body's pace. So they're following along with the client, and they're building that safety before change happens. When the nervous system resets, everything else improves. Pain, sleep, digestion, mood, healing capacity. This is where real transformation begins, and this is what we need to guide our clients towards. So hopefully you found this interesting. I know that this topic is, like many of the ones we cover in these Santa Institute trainings, a huge, huge topic that could probably be a giant lecture by itself. And especially once you start looking into the mindset piece of all of this as well, and how much that holds people up, that really can hit you pretty hard when you realize how that works. But we will be covering another topic next week. So if you have any questions, drop them below. If not, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next week for another 10-minute training. Take care.